for joining this live streamed community event on the Teaching English Facebook page, brought to you by the British Council. My name is Marcus James, and today, with my panel of guests, we're going to be exploring what makes a good teacher. So on the top right of your screen, you can see a familiar face to many of you who may be following one of our teacher training courses, Huma Riaz. Huma, how are you today?
Hi, Marcus. I'm fine, thank you. How are you doing today, Marcus?
I'm very well. Looking forward to our discussion on what makes a good teacher. In the bottom
Me too.
left of your screen, we've got Ebru Weston. Hi, Ebru. How are you today?
I'm all right, thank you, Marcus. How are you?
I'm very well too. And in the bottom right of your screen is Anne Vietch. How are you today, Anne?
I'm good, Marcus. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. Thank you for asking. So, what makes a good teacher? This is what we'd like to hear from you, the followers of Teaching English, right here today, joining and following this discussion live on Facebook. So, do let us know in the chat, according to you and your school and where you teach, what makes a good teacher? Let's throw this to Huma. This was a question that you suggested, actually, so I'm sure you have something to say on the matter.
Okay, well, I saw that coming my way, Marcus. All right. Well, Marcus, I was thinking about this the other day, and thanks to all the followers of the Teaching English page, I think they answered this very same question on the page, and they've exhausted all the positive adjectives that are there in the dictionary. So I'm not going to go there. I'm going to put this in a little bit of a context. So I was thinking about what makes a good teacher in 2023. So I think it's someone who does not conform to the traditional standards and is willing to break some rules. I don't mean in a chaotic way, I mean in a more refreshing, rejuvenating, and in a more developing sense. And I also thought that it's perhaps someone who's able to recognize and respond to the changing education landscape, which includes issues around inclusion, sustainable goals, multilingual teaching, and of course AI. I mean, we all know that genie is out of the lamp now. It's not going to go back in anytime soon, really. And so in my opinion, I think a teacher in 2023, a good language teacher in 2023, someone who's able to perhaps look beyond teaching those grammar and pronunciation rules and can help her students become global citizens through more meaningful, inclusive, and empathetic communication.
Excellent. I love that response. Very comprehensive. Ebru, obviously, you three, Ebru, Huma, and Anne, you wrote recently an article for the British Council Voices magazine, and I can see that although you had a lot of teaching experience, there's a lovely part of your article where you said you had to rewrite your CV. So if you're a good teacher, why do you need to sort of adapt your CV or resume for different schools? Why did you have to do that?
Well, there are kind of two reasons. One is the reason that I'm actually, well, I don't know how to put this, but let me give the reasons. So first of all, when I first started as a teacher, the reason I had to adapt who I was and my background was because the request for native speaker teachers in the country I was looking for a job. So I had to make it kind of almost excuse the fact that I was from Turkey, but make up for it by just talking about all sorts of other things, including, my experience, how long I've lived in England, and the kind of amount of travel I did and the places I worked in. And it just kind of that was the kind of challenging period. But since that environment, I moved on to kind of working in places where they didn't request native teachers. And I mean, that's kind of connected to your first question a little bit as well, Marcus. What I'm going to kind of say, the reason I now adapt it is because of the kind of qualities the schools and language education organizations ask for. So I adapt it to make sure that I'm kind of fitting in with what they're asking for, but not even applying for any jobs where I see the term native speaker anymore either.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that with us. We do have a global audience following us right now, so I'd like to say a quick hi to Luke from Poland, Chandu from Sri Lanka, Mamuna in Pakistan, Seman in Iraq Kurdistan, Nana in Egypt, Gigi in Algeria, Riyadh in Algeria as well, and Mudiran from Syria. Lots and lots of teachers watching. Sort of touched on this idea of being a language teacher. So I think for a lot of people, they do still have these sort of antiquated ideas that you have to come from a country and be born in that country and possess a passport from that country in order to be a good teacher of the language of that country. I think Huma and Ebru said that they have experienced this at some point. And is this still true today? Is it fair in terms of recruiting practice, or is it practical from a language perspective to only have people teaching it who come from that country where the language is spoken? Sorry, that's a very weighted question, Anne. I do apologize if it's too much, but do let us know. What are your thoughts?
I think despite the developments in understanding about English language and global Englishes, world Englishes, there is still a lot of prejudice. The native label is often used as a gatekeeper to recruitment. But it's also the kind of native language, your passport. It's linked to what you look like, what you sound like, your class, your language, your ethnicity. So there's a lot of prejudice still around it. I don't think it's a helpful label. I would traditionally be labelled as a native speaker, but I would never be comfortable with labelling myself as a native speaker, although I've worked like Ebru and Huma in lots of different contexts and environments where I've got jobs because I've been a native speaker. I speak a variety of English, which would be classed as a non-prestige variety. So I come from the northeast of England, so my local dialect is Geordie, and I feel that even as a native speaker, I've still experienced through my career the kind of corrections from speakers of a more standard variety of English, criticism, mockery of how I speak, or microaggressions. So no, I don't think it's a useful label. I think that kind of binary choice between are you a native speaker, are you a non-native speaker, is really divisive within our ELT community, and their terms, and that kind of binary term is something that I think we should move on from in ELT.
There is a comment here from, I'm going to have to excuse my Arabic reading. Huma, correct me if I'm wrong. Mudiran?
Yes, Mudiran.
Oh, yes.
You got it.
5 years in Saudi Arabia. Managed to read.
Has helped, Marcus.
It has helped. It has helped. So Mudiran's comment here, sort of go back to our sort of question about what makes a good teacher. The comment here says, mastering that native accent, it's a good goal. Now, I only brought this up because we were we've already started this discussion on sort of being a speaker who sounds like one of the English-speaking countries. Let's throw this to Huma.
Okay, I'd love to answer that, Marcus.
Oh, please do.
Well, Marcus, this is a very tricky question, a difficult question, a question that I asked myself a few times when I started teaching. And frankly, like Ebru and Anne have said, I think a good teacher can come from anywhere in the world. and can speak any first language. So it doesn't matter even if there's an influence, of your own language over your English pronunciation, because I think language is an important part of my identity, and I don't want to sound like anybody else. I want to sound like me, and that's what makes me unique. But I know that there are a lot of students, and I have known colleagues who've tried to master the native accent to fit in, and unfortunately, I think that's something that can affect people in many ways. Like I said, language is an important part of identity, and today in 2023, I think all of us, have accents that's a mishmash of various varieties. For example, when I was growing up, I learned British English, but because of my continued exposure to American media and entertainment, I think I've got a mix of some American, accent or language usage, in my English. And then there's a flavor of Indianness to it too. So I don't know what accent do I really have today. But I think as long as people can understand me, I think that's okay. So I think all of us today, as teachers and people in ELT, we need to pause and ask ourselves that if we listen to something, is it unacceptable or unfamiliar? Because I think everyone's voice needs to be valued, regardless of how it differs from our own.
Absolutely. As Perna Roy says, I think we should teach for understandable pronunciation. Now, I've got a question here from Lida Caldas. So perhaps Ebru and Anne might be able to chip in here. What do you do when you don't know the meaning of some words students ask? I sometimes don't know words in my own language. So we're, from a perspective of being an English language teacher who happens to maybe not know, and it's happened to us all. I don't care whether we're where we're from. I've had to look up words. Not sure of the meaning of them sometimes. I don't know every word in the dictionary. Is this necessarily connected to being from a country that speaks the language that you're teaching? How do you deal with this, Ebru?
Yeah, I'll just give you an example from when I first started teaching. And if you read the article we wrote, there is an example of it there. And I had to pretend I was half British on the basis of the request from the school I was working for. And it was already very uncomfortable having to lie to my students. And then when they asked for words that I didn't know the meaning of, I made the massive mistake of trying to kind of work it out from the context and explain it to them. But very quickly, I realized that it wasn't going to get me anywhere. And I learned to say, I don't know, let's check it together. And I think we've come a very long way since then, as well, as native speakerism is losing its weight. Therefore, our students know, where we are from, and we don't have to pretend where we're from. And we already show our expertise and professionalism in our teaching, and we are allowed. And as Marcus said, even if you're the native speaker of the language, not everybody knows all the words. And I think we need to learn to say, let's look at it together. And I don't know.
Exactly. Luke here mentioned exactly just the same. I just admit I don't know something and we check it together in the dictionary. After all, we're all humans. And it's not just that, obviously, we're modeling these problem-solving behaviors that we want our learners to, become more independent learners, don't we? Okay, excellent. Now, you just touched on this article that you wrote for the British Council Voices magazine. And you kind of wrote the bulk of it. What was the article about, and what was the inspiration really behind writing it?
I didn't write the bulk of it. It was a very collaborative experience, and I really enjoyed working with my colleagues, Huma and Ebru. I think it's a long time since British Council looked at these issues. We looked back at what British Council had published before on native speakers and native speakerism. And I think about 10 years ago, there was a lot of discussion around this topic, but there'd been a long gap in our engagement in this topic through articles. So it seemed like a good time to write something about it, given how society progresses, language progresses. Yeah. So that's really the inspiration for it. And I think our work in British Council is moving to a place where where maybe in the past we recruited, like a lot of teaching centres do. We worked on a recruitment model where native speakers were recruited. We've moved forward and beyond that a little bit. And in the area that I work in English in a multilingual world, so English in multilingual contexts. A lot of the global Englishes, world Englishes, native speaker arguments are very, very relevant for the work that we do in this area, which is largely around English as a language of learning and teaching and English in multilingual contexts, where native speaker varieties and norms maybe have less importance.
Excellent. I was just going to bring Ebru into this one. Charmaine comments, very well said, no to the labelling of sort of native and non-native, and let's practice inclusivity, not only for our students, but for teachers as well. I think we have spent quite a probably a longer time preaching this sort of inclusiveness among our learners, but from the institution side, we have been a bit slow to catch up with sort of following our own words, so to speak. So how can, I guess, we sort of bring these recruitment policies and institutional practices up to the same level of inclusion and diversity that we expect from our learners?
I think you're totally right about how much kind of emphasis we've put on inclusion of our students, inclusivity for our students, but the teachers always got kind of not forgotten, but there hasn't been as much emphasis on that, definitely. And from my experience, there has been a lot of work internally within the British Council on that. We made sure that we are not using native speakerism in our language, in our discussions, in our promotions, and we are not kind of exclusively inviting applications from native teachers. As Anne mentioned, that happened years ago, but we've moved a very long way since then. And there has been a lot of kind of internal activities, including some training to kind of increase awareness and understanding of the importance of diversity in our teaching teams, in the teaching center context, for example. And this has included not only the teachers themselves and managers, it also included marketing colleagues, customer service colleagues, and HR colleagues as well, because it's really important that we are all speaking the same language and we all have the same beliefs and values when it comes to kind of being inclusive about our teachers as well, and being proud of our diversity. I think that's one of the things we've done quite well. Just making sure that we're communicating how important the diversity is, and that communicating that we have teachers, for example, from diverse backgrounds. It's not just native teachers. And by writing articles like this and getting into discussions about native speakerism, just kind of stating where we are and keeping the conversation going, I think it's really important to have these discussions, within an organization, within a school, and just making sure that actually we're doing what we're talking about as well. It's not left as just a talk.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Again, very good, sort of comprehensive answer there. A few comments coming in. So we're chatting about just now, and there seems to be quite a lot of focus on pronunciation and kind of checking the meaning. So another comment here from Purna Roy, who says, if there is an unknown word, we should take good preparation before teaching them. Yeah, I think it's part of lesson planning, isn't it? A few other comments. Leader says, great, I love the suggestion of let's check it together. You know, makes it more collaborative, doesn't it? This is from Charmaine. We all make mistakes, and it's essential to remind our students it's okay to make mistakes, and we learn and grow together. So again, you know, it's about that, the classroom and being, you know, as a collaboration of learner and teacher, exploring topics and language together. Lots and lots. Fantastic suggestions. Now, there was one here, I'm just trying to find it, that touched on this idea of accent and, you know, world Englishes. So there are lots and lots of English ways of pronouncing. And you know, you mentioned you from the northeast, and that you have a Geordie accent. Geordie would be native to which city? Would be Newcastle?
Yeah, my accent's Picmatic Geordie, so it's from the Durham coalfields officially.
Okay. See, my accent's quite interesting because you might not be able to place it geographically, because I've kind of worked in so many different parts of the world with colleagues from many parts of the world as well, and students from probably every country around the world at some point. So I did have a sort of a Welsh, South Welsh accent at one point, but that's kind of been neutralized over time. To the panel, in terms of the English that we would sort of use as a model, let's say, you know, we've got the standard American English, the standard British English, the varieties within those, Australian, South African, Jamaican. We could mention every sort of country that uses the English language. Is it important to focus on one or expose learners to a range of different world Englishes? To the panel.
Can I answer that, Marcus?
I had a feeling you might.
Ebru and Anne are okay. Can I take that?
Yes, go for it.
Okay,
Of course, yeah.
I think that's a very good question, Marcus, because if you see, nearly 75% of the speakers of English are not native, which means that there are so many world Englishes today. It's not just for one variety. So I see the standard English that most teachers or organizations or course book materials refer to as just one of those varieties. So it cannot be automatically be used as, you know, the pedagogical target or reference. I think it depends on the context. So if the teacher is teaching in a context where it's good to run with the local variety of English, then why not? But if I'm going to teach students who have to engage in communication, where they have to work with people for business and academia across regional borders or national borders, then I would automatically assume that I may have to teach them what I would call it as the international English, which is more English as a lingua franca, or in other words, intelligible English. So communication is successful. So I don't think there's one variety of English that we can really fall back on today. It depends on the context, the learner's needs, and what you're really working with in the classroom.
I would completely agree, Huma. I think we need to raise awareness with students that there are a lot of varieties of English. I think sometimes the focus is just on UK or US English, which is not really appropriate in a globalized world where we're working with, where English is a common language, a shared language among many different people used for communication. And I completely agree with your points about intelligibility. It's about intelligibility and can you be understood? Can you understand the speaker who's speaking to you?
Thank you, Anne.
Now I've just brought up this comment from
like when we talk about, you know, British English, what are we really talking about, you know, and you gave the example from yourself. I just Googled it and just thought, see if I can get how many different accents there are in England. There isn't a definitive number, but I think I've got a list of kind of, vague list of 17 or 18 different accents. So what are we referring to when we say British English as well? So I think it's, I agree with both of you. It's really important that, you're able to, explain yourself and be understood, with your pronunciation, and also it's the same, be able to understand different accents from different parts of the world. We're very mobile these days, and we will be traveling or online discussing things or having meetings with people from all over the world. So we should be able to understand all accents. So I agree. They need, the students should be exposed to different accents, not just one.
We don't have just one accent for as a person. Your accent, you use it to reflect your personality, your identity.
Yeah.
Your accent changes depending on who you're talking to. You flex to that situation. It's accents and ways of speaking are very flexible, and I think we need to acknowledge that when we're teaching English.
I absolutely love that. It's so true. I mean, I'm here
It
now
is.
with my family, and my accent sort of it comes in waves. Now, you touched on that idea of exposure to learners of different accents, but what Monthakan shares here, I think, is quite a widely held belief that the teacher is the correct model for students. So the teacher should know and prepare how to pronounce before teaching those learners. How do you respond to that? Because it's a difficult, we do those drills, don't we? Repeat after me. Other teachers may not be maybe a bit less confident and may rely on sort of audio recordings as a model for pronunciation. But what should we be using as a model? The panel.
Marcus,
Can I give you
I
an
hope it's okay
example
if I go.
again?
Okay, go ahead, Ebru.
Yeah, please go. No, Huma, please go. Please go ahead.
Okay, so Marcus, I was gonna say, well, it just depends, I for example, very frankly, if I look at my classroom, I don't necessarily use any model. I don't go to any dictionary or any website and play any model for my students. I just say it the way I say it, and I think they understand me well, and they say it in a way they want to say it, using their own regional language influence over their English pronunciation. And if I understand it, okay, then I think communication has been successful. So in my classroom, I don't really go back to any specific variety or model. I just say it the way I say it.
Okay.
I think the key is it's not about a model, it's about models.
Yes. So we have so many models in the classroom. If you say, everybody says it in a different way. But yes, I do have students. Yes, but I do have students who always come to me, and they ask me, oh, can you teach me British accent and American? I tell them, no, I'm not equipped to teach you any accent, really. So I'm sorry. I really can't. It's also a little bit artificial and natural, to let go of your natural accent when you learn a language. I think that's something, again, that teachers and students must become more aware of, that you don't have to learn a global language like English at the cost of losing your own language identity. So they all can, work together. So you don't have to lose one to learn another one.
That's interesting. Rashmi actually says here, we only teach British spellings and accent, and we're not allowed to use American pronunciation. Now, this comes down to sort of maybe a school-wide policy, or maybe something from the exam board. I think I know the answer to this already, but I mean, is this applicable in 2023? Anne?
For me, it illustrates exactly what you've just said, the fact that language policy in school, national language policies, assessments, and the way we assess students, the whole sector needs to really catch up in terms of modern life in the 21st century.
Absolutely. And there's another lovely comment, a little bit big, so it's kind of buried, poor Anne at the bottom. So I'll read it quickly. Asma says, when I learned Portuguese, we learned mostly European Portuguese, but we're exposed to Brazilian Portuguese as well, so could identify the differences, and the same should apply to teaching and learning English or any language which has variations. So I think that sums up what we were talking about, you know, having there's no one single model, and you are going to be collaborating and communicating with people who use different varieties of any language. So of course, you know, we need to be able to communicate with them. So we need to be aware of these differences, but not necessarily, you know, adopting them ourselves. Okay, great. I'm just quickly scanning the comments. I see that the time has pretty much run out, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I just realized that it was in the corner as I was looking for further comments. But anyway, teachers, do keep the conversation going. We're really keen and interested in your experiences of language teaching and the different models that you use in your classroom, the varieties that you expose your learners to. If you'd like to hear more from Huma, Anne, and Ebru, you can check out their Voices magazine article on the British Council website. Louise, who is busy moderating in the comments, will post a link to that. There's also a link in the description of this video. But anyway, thank you very much, Anne, Ebru, and Huma, for joining the panel for this important discussion. I can see a lot of teachers have appreciated your efforts and the ideas that you've been sharing with us today.
Thank you, Marcus, and thank you everybody for coming today.
Okay, so
Thanks
thank you,
for having
Ebru.
us.
Thank you, Anne.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
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 Yeah, bye-bye.